Welcome to ArchiSpeak, the podcast that talks about what it's like to work in the profession of architecture.
So I was on I guess it's a final jury for the students that we were working with at Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the jurors had made reference to powers of 10. And I was just like must have, just beamed across the Zooms because he said it and I just smiled like, yes, somebody finally. Maybe I felt like I was the only person ever quoting or referencing or trying to use powers of 10 as a educational reference point. Mm-hmm. And so, when he said it, because, and it was very appropriate to the thing. And it was like, it ultimately boiled down to a specific building within a specific district within the greater campus of Auburn. And so, he started talking about the powers of 10 and then I kind of, and everybody kind of like looked a little confused when he said it, and even a few of the jurors. And I was just like, well, it's about the macro view and the micro view. It's zooming in, zooming out. There's the old days when, we were drawing something on our board and our professor would say, now get up and take a step back and take a look at it and see what you see. And as simple as that, but also just, in the good thing about like all of these the new technology that we're able to implement in the design process, we're able to say, okay, this building is going to be at this location on this block. Well, let me zoom out and see the block. Well, let me zoom out and see the area. Let me zoom out and see the city. Let me zoom out and see the, and so, you have that ability to do that. And that's the beauty of like that simple lesson that the 10 plus minutes of Powers of 10 movie actually is able to kind of like convey is zoom in, zoom out, look at everything, look at, that's, I was just like, I try to explain to people, I was like, that's what we're doing with our set of documents too, is like, we start with the site plan, then we move to the floor plan, then we move to maybe an enlarged plan, then we move to a call out, and that call out then, refers to quite possibly a specific detail. But all of these things are a way of letting other people understand how everything goes together. And that's kind of what we were sort of talking about.
I think what's interesting too about that idea of kind of stepping back and looking at something with a fresh set of eyes is that could be a neighbor, right? Like somebody sitting near you, or now somebody on another screen somewhere else. And it's just say, hey, get on this, look at this. What am I not seeing?
Right.
What am I too fixated on? What should I be thinking about? I always felt like that was a useful tool, was just to actually get somebody else's eyes. They say put a fresh set of eyes on it. And that was kind of like what you're talking about, where it's like zooming out, but it's zooming out to the conscious. It's like, who else wants to look at this? That's what a crit is about, right? It's like, now let's talk about all the things that I'm missing, right? Or what can I get out of this to make it better? What about other people's perspectives that I'm not even considering? That's an interesting kind of, the powers of 10 and the larger consciousness. Like you just said, like you put it out there into the Zooms, right? It's like it's in the consciousness. You put this thing out there and people are referring to it. And maybe they directly heard it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just stumbled upon it. But I think that's kind of a interesting serendipitous kind of a thing that happens.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the kind of the issues that old timers lament about, with now that you're not on a drawing board, other people can't walk by and see what you're working on in a greater whole. And a lot of times I tend to like to work when I'm in Revit. I tend to like to work on the sheet itself and work with what has been placed on the sheet.
In context of,
so that I can see what is going on, like what is the intention of this particular sheet and what is the story we're trying to tell. We've done all this work. We put it on a page. Now what is this page actually telling us?
That's funny because I don't think of it like that. I see what you're saying, and I understand the value in that. Coming from the design side, and usually there aren't sheets yet, and so it is much more the earlier stuff you were talking about with the context to the surrounding buildings, the context to the campus, the context to the spaces that are adjacent, the context to the experience of somebody walking through it, and there's value in both of those perspectives. I think as further, because design doesn't stop, right?
True.
It does continue all the way through, and it does get to the point where you are telling a visual story / narrative on sheets, and things are being kind of positioned adjacent to each other so that you can tell the whole story, right? That's really the goal, is to tell the whole story.
Right.
And so when you do something on the left side of the sheet, it could very well impact something on the right side of the sheet. And that's the beauty of what a building information model is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to automatically update everything all the time, and you don't have to go and chase those things down. But now we have to go and chase things down that were the unintended outcomes of a change, right? It's like, just because you moved it here doesn't mean you don't follow it around now and see what else happened. And I think it does make a lot of sense to view those when you are making modifications in context to some of those other things. This is where the whole idea of like the Minority Report screens really comes into play, right? Because like the more views of the thing, kind of the better. You don't get such tunnel vision about, you're just working on that RCP.
True.
You want to see the section, and you want to see the plan, and you want to see the rendering, or like the real-time image update of what you're doing to that space all at the same time, so that you don't accidentally not catch something like that, which happens all the time.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I was sort of more referring to is that there are a moment in time, in this particular case, construction documentation, where you've gone through the process of doing the macro view, micro view of the design, trying to pull through. And yes, design continues on even through construction, documentation, maybe not necessarily, and administration, not necessarily in the way that, we intend to, but where we are at least, hopefully, when we start documentation, we've made all of the decisions on the design. And so now we're choosing the best route to display that design so that when it goes into construction, that they get the full intent of the design and can fully understand it. So when we're going through things and we do have to adjust stuff, because now we're coordinating a few things with, because nothing ever really, and it pains me to say this, but nothing is ever really truly finished design or coordination when you complete DDs. You're always in CDs trying to work through some issues and stuff like that, which unfortunately is the case with where I'm currently at right now, with just a fast-moving project that has got so many different opinions being implemented in the process, and none of those opinions come in a timely fashion, and so you're trying to kind of play catch up while you're trying to document, which everybody sadly feels that same pain all the way through, and you even said it sometimes all the way through even into CA, and it's trying to stay ahead of all of that while actually trying to make sure that the IKEA instructions that you're creating for everybody to understand are understandable.
That's when that extra set of eyes really comes in handy, because everybody is just, I'm so sick of looking at this.
Yeah.
You need somebody else who is not sick of looking at it, right?
And unfortunately, because you do get the tunnel vision, and you do, like, you're staring into that micro vision of things, pulling back, asking somebody else to take a look at it, asking somebody else to say, does this make sense to you? I mean, a lot of times we spend a lot of our time during documentation process, hopefully asking each other, does this make sense to you? Because at the very least, it can make sense to me all it wants to,
Yeah.
But
but you're not
but,
the end.
But I am
of
not the
line.
end, exactly. And if it doesn't make sense to somebody else, they're like, well, what are you trying to say here? Well, what I'm trying to say here is this. Oh, well, you're not doing a very good job of explaining it, so that means I got to do something else to make sure that I'm explaining it to somebody else. And so that's I think that's where the this overlay of powers of 10 kind of thing, or this macrovision, microvision that I always kind of harp on, really does come in handy. It's like, let's zoom out and really take a look at what we're trying to tell everybody. Because, again, and you and I say this often, it's like until we get to the point where we are building off of the model, the true model, and we're still building with 2D documents, those 2D documents still have to tell the story about what the hell is going on.
Yeah. I always thought it was interesting how when you're in school, there's the basic set of documents that are required to tell that story, right? And it's kind of a formula, right? It's already figured out. It's already got the recipe. It's these 4 elevations, these 2 sections, these 3 plans, whatever it is. And but really that's just a guideline. That's not reality. You have to figure out what is going to tell this story for this project. And it doesn't necessarily need to check all those boxes. And I always thought that was kind of a design problem unto itself, which is creating a presentation to communicate that design and to communicate those intentions. And you could easily just say, when somebody says, well, why don't you have this required, quote unquote, drawing? And it's like, well, because I did this one instead that tells that story in a better way. But very few people actually go through the process of thinking about it like that. They just produce exactly what was asked for.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you didn't need to produce some of those drawings and spend the time doing it because they are valueless. They just check that box, and it's like,
yeah. And that's exactly, what's interesting is that, a lot of times, especially doing, public work type stuff, that when you give your, client a deliverable, they're expecting X, Y, and Z. Let me check off all of the boxes. Did Evan give me my 4 elevations, my 3 sections and 2 plans, or vice versa and stuff? And you check yes, check yes, check yes. Okay, thank you. And then let's move on. And you're just like, yeah, but do you really understand what's going on here?
It's kind of crazy, right? Because sections and elevations are free now. It's like they're just wherever you want them. Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make sense to continue with that formula when you are talking about a model that you can slice and dice any way you want.
And the one good thing that I've seen that I love about this almost hybrid of documentation that we've been going through right now, and also, well, and let me finish one point before I finish the other or start another, is that I love that, especially in more complicated, complex buildings that, got a lot of different, elevational changes, or, it cuts back to a soffit, and then, this is coming in at a different angle than this. And so a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, almost guaranteed that a 2D elevation straight on really doesn't help with that story. You really don't understand, okay, I'm looking at 3 different glazing facades, but what's not really illustrated in that you hopefully are depicting in a section is that these are all at 3 different planes. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking more specifically of something that I've got going on. And so one of the things that we decided to do, which, just seems to be a no-brainer to probably some people, but, is turning out to be more and more revelation as we continue to keep doing 2D documentation for a very 3D thing, is...
Can I guess?
Yes.
Before I'm going to guess it's shadows.
No. It's
okay. What is it?
It's putting in axons. So, we do lots of...
Shadows help too.
Shadows do help.
How do you convey depth in an elevation?
Shadows do help in a straight 2D elevation. But, when I've got a building that I've got 3 floors that are coming into and colliding into an existing building, that then, if you follow that roof back it then has this big mechanical shaft, and then it turns into this other thing that attaches to another plane of the building that then kind of turns back, and it's got all of these different twists and turns, and there's really no way that a true 2D element is going to convey that idea without truly seeing it in the 3 dimension. So we have used axons probably more on this particular project than I've done in the past. Now, we've used axons before to like convey, hey, in this particular location, here is the line of, and I love it when we use them for these particular things. Like, so if I've got 2 existing buildings or an existing building and a new building coming together, what's the best way to convey what's going on with the expansion joints? You do this nice, like, cutaway 3D axon that literally is showing you, here is my exterior expansion joint. Here is my interior expansion joints, both horizontally and vertically. Here's where the transitions are and stuff. And then you can key off of that all of your different, sections that go to that. But at least being able to see everything all together in one cohesive, view, like, oh, okay, here's what I need to pay attention to when I'm working on this area.
Yeah, we had that science building that you came out and saw us doing the initial sketches on when you visited.
Yeah.
We ended up doing exactly that because it was kind of a weird E-shaped building. It had nothing to do with the first initial, my name. But it was like that. You would show an elevation, and then there was an axon that went along with it to give that larger context. And that also kind of worked its way into the building. We would do that for more complicated areas like the main lobby stair to actually show it just told the story better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, getting back to what we were talking about and why would you, and what's so funny is how controversial these ideas are to people who've been in the business for a long time. It's like, you're going to do what? You're not turning shadows on in those elevations.
Exactly. It's like, that's blasphemy. It's like, whoa.
It is. It's kind of blasphemy. And it's like, you're going to put axons on the elevation sheets? What are you, that's crazy. And then it's like, it was funny because you could actually watch their minds change as they saw it. And they're like, why don't we do this on every project?
Exactly.
Because now it's free, right? Like, that's the thing is, you would have never done that before because it would be a very complicated drawing that you would have to redo many, many times as the design changed. And now it's just constantly being updated, and there it is. That's a view sitting on a sheet, and it just updates by itself.
And it's like, and this is the easiest way for you to understand what the hell I'm trying to do in this space.
Right.
Is, look, here it is. Here is the space. I'll tell you, actually, one of the most controversial I guess documentation things that I tried to implement, and I literally had a lot of pushback from a client who's just like, we that's not part of our standard. We don't want that. I'm like, but this is a pretty complicated renovation, and all of the demolition that we're doing, I want to make sure that they truly understand what I'm trying to say. They're like, well, can't you say that in notes on your basically plans and elevations? I'm like, I can, but if I'm trying to tell them, here's your wall, and I want you to keep this, and this, but I don't want you to keep this, and this, the easiest way for me to do that is to take a photograph, drop it in the drawings, and basically point to what is to stay, what is to go. Yeah. And then they literally can say, picture wall, and say, okay, mark that, and that to stay, and all of the rest of it goes. And I got so much pushback on it. I was like, but they're like, well, we just feel it is very unnecessary and just makes the documents too big for us to, to really, have issued. And I was just, I don't get why you're saying that when the intent of the documentation is to be as clear as possible with what we want to happen.
So you can answer less questions later.
Exactly. And I was like, we've found that their contention is that they find that it's too confusing, and I contended that it takes the confusion out of it. Mm-hmm. That it actually helps the process, especially in more complicated buildings. That we've got I have a building right now, and it's the issues and contentions from the client are not related to this particular building, but this particular building, thankfully, I sold it to them ahead of time, trying to let them understand exactly what was going on and why we were using them. And they were like, yeah, I see that. But, because this particular one, we're coming into, I'm doing math in my head right now. 1, 2, I think we're intersecting 6 different buildings with our one building. And so obviously each of those conditions that we intersect to that particular building, whether it's an exterior, roof condition that ties into it, or if it's an interior condition where, this side of the wall goes away, but that side of the wall stays there. And how do I really tell that person what stays and what goes? I had the case where, some people over demoed stuff, and you're just like, that's not what was in the drawings. And they're like, well, we still got to get paid. I'm like, yeah, no. I also literally use it to help me in CA, justify why I would deny a change order.
Yeah.
It's like, I already told you what we were supposed to do and even gave you pictures. You didn't follow the picture book. And now, you're asking to do more, to get more money for work that you shouldn't have done.
Yeah. That doesn't work.
So, it's, I really like I like the interesting evolution of using, BIM in a 2D, because, we're using BIM and BIM is here to stay. BIM is here to evolve, hopefully, the way that we do things. But when we're still continuously stuck in this limbo between the 2D, 3D,
yeah,
it gives me the level of creativity with the documentation that we would otherwise not have.
Yeah, I think that's where things get interesting with VR and real-time rendering, stuff that just, again, it becomes free because it's just part of the model. I always think it's funny when people are like, how much can we charge extra for that? And it's like, well, it's kind of already, it's just there. It's part of it.
Yeah.
And it's useful, and it helps people make decisions, and it helps people understand. So we should use it for those reasons. You get the contractor into the model,
mm-hmm.
and you do a virtual walkthrough with them before you build it, and things make a lot more sense. They understand how to price something, right? Before, all they had to look at were two-dimensional output and trying to figure out, the length of the guardrail as it snaked through the lobby down the 3 levels of stairs. And it's like, well, let me actually show you what's going on there, and let's just pull it up and look at it. And that visualization tool is super helpful in those kind of those circumstances where it just, like they say, the picture says 1,000 words. It's exactly that and more, because you can get in there and you can walk around it and you can look at things and pull people together and talk to each other and talk through issues. It's funny because people are still push against getting in there. I think that, that either they'll think, oh, I'll get in there sometime. But the ones who do get in there and use it as a decision-making tool or to actually tell the story, I think are a step ahead of the ones who don't.
Yeah, the good thing about that is, just in the quarantine world we're in right now, we still have to get buy-in from the client on certain design decisions that have been evolving. And, you can take all of the 2D images that you want and it kind of gives you an understanding. But we pulled up the model before we got on the phone and went ahead and pulled up Enscape to let it kind of churn through so everybody's not watching somebody's computer kind of churn through a real-time rendering.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once it was up, we could walk around the lobby space that we were looking at the varying head heights, the varying, ceiling elevational changes and things like that, and just walk through and you're like, oh, yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
No, that I don't feel like that really is working for me. What about this or that? Great thing about it is it's a very collaborative kind of thing that people can, take a look at and just in real time. And we would be doing the same thing if we were sitting in the office with them. They just so happen that we are doing everything by Zoom and are able to walk through. The only thing that I'm finding is the interesting I don't know, hiccup with these Zoom conversations is when you're in a meeting and, 9 times out of 10, nobody's on, nobody's activated their camera. So, you don't really see, because a lot of times you get to see their, like, I was called out for, when we were, one of the last times we were, at a face-to-face meeting, we were going through a design and people were explaining the design. And apparently my face was telegraphing my dislike for that particular issue. And the client's like, whoa, before we move on, Cormac's over there.
Cormac's grimacing.
Yeah, Cormac doesn't have a very happy, look on his face.
Face on.
Yeah, for lack of a better term. And she's like, Cormac, what are your concerns?
This is my resting architect face.
And she was just like, well, what are your concerns? And I kind of, went through them, and everybody's like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And, let's talk about that. And, you talk through some issues like that. Or, a lot of times in meetings and stuff, a lot of times, unfortunately, in Zoom, you're talking over everybody because, everybody's trying to talk at the same time because they can't see the visual cue that somebody else is like really passionate about. I got to say something about that. That just, it's, that's either awesome or it's driving me insane or whatever. And so I think those are probably the next big hurdle of the digital communication that we probably now are seeing. This whole world is probably going to be ushering a lot more of those rather than a lot of like these internal face-to-face meetings, because let's just say that as part of all of me going out to the site, I got to keep all my receipts and my parking and gas to and from and all that other stuff and expense them and get have them pay the reimbursables and everything else. And it's just like, oh, wait. It might be cheaper if Cormac doesn't drive out to the site, but we have a quick meeting and he pulls up all of the visuals of everything that he would be doing in front of me anyway. And and then I save myself $20 every time he comes out here or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah. So tell me about this the design class that you guys are helping out with at Auburn.
Okay, so they started off with having a project that was basically a campus planning project for a currently it's the Hill Dorm District on Auburn, which is not too far from the architecture building. And when I was there, it was all girls dorm. Now it's kind of a co-ed dorm, and it's seen better days. And the growth of developer apartment buildings and all that other stuff throughout the city has made a lot of on-campus living less and less desirable because you can get something better off-campus than you can on campus. And so they've been looking at, well, what are some of these, better uses for that particular site as the campus is growing. They've awkwardly grown some academic buildings and stuff well beyond the reach of like the center core of campus. And there's some awkward development going on there for some of this, but this particular space is kind of like the linchpin of like how to reconnect what I was calling the historic campus core to all of these new outlying developments of academic buildings that are a little bit further away from. I mean, we're talking about walking distance of like half an hour from, like say that we did a school of nursing building on campus. And for you to get to like the center area where the new, maybe not a half an hour, but like 20 minutes or so to walk from that building up to where all of the new food areas are. I mean, they've got all sorts of, they've got the student union, and then they've got a couple of other like cafeterias and things like that, all kind of clustered in and around center of campus, but they're so far out of reach of all of these other things. And that, people who are working within the building, they're like, I don't go over there because it takes so long for me to get there and then get back. You're talking about 45 minutes just in walking there and walking back because you're not going to get in your car and drive on, from where you are on campus to another place on campus because you'll never find parking.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so they've started taking a look at like different types of challenges that some of these new developments are, and looking at this particular development as an ideal place for growth on campus, for new academic buildings that are aging out, or being able to like reorganize some of the campus where, say, you've got a math building next to a English building, but you've got other like sciences around that one, and the English really probably isn't suited to be there, but putting another math building or a science building there would cluster that department a little bit better, and so that there could be shared resources, and then maybe creating a more, something that's a little bit more centric to a English building. I'm just using that as an example. As in this particular case, they were talking, it's more about the School of Education, and kind of pulling that away from this core of other uses, let that grow kind of organically as something that works with those particular uses in those buildings, and then create other cores. And so they had originally started with looking at this Hill Dorm district as, okay, what can it be? What should be there? And things like that. And then once they, first they looked at the greater whole of the campus, looked at the organization of the campus, looked at the organization from a standpoint of different programs, like what schools are where, different green spaces, different amenities. How do you traverse the actual campus, both vehicularly and pedestrian and so on? And started just taking a look at it overall and said, okay, this is, if campus is already looking at this area as to be the new home for School of Education, what else can go there? What else should be there? And so that was kind of their charge, was to take a look at the district. And so the first half of the semester was taking a look at that and doing group projects to do some campus planning, which is kind of how we got involved, because they reached out to the campus planner, and they said, hey, we want to pair up with a professional firm to kind of come in and, possibly give us pointers on what they look at when they are doing campus planning and stuff. And they said, who would you suggest? Awesomely, the planner suggested us. He said, you should reach out to Air St. Gross. And them not knowing that there is a huge Auburn cheerleader working for them, as they were planning it, they were like, okay, business development people were looking at it. It's like, this is not, an opportunity for us to do some volunteer work, but also, potentially just get our names, on people's minds in Auburn, which, hopefully it does. I mean, I'd be lying to say that I would love to absolutely keep working with Auburn and stuff. But so somebody reached out and said, hey, you went to Auburn, right? Like, yeah. And they're like, well, this is, what do you think about this opportunity? I'm like, yeah, count me in. And so we went down there and we, kind of gave a presentation on, what ASG does when we first do client engagement, when we start to take a look at, what are the early steps of campus planning? How do we approach it? And how do we continue to process that through to the point where then probably a little bit past mid-semester, they switched over to doing a specific building, and then so each of them designed the campus or that district area, and it probably had about, say, 14 different buildings that were suggested for it. And each of them selected a couple of different types of buildings to develop. And then from there, they just took it from, basically concept to, let's call it early schematic. And then just gave a presentation on their process of early schematic work. I tend to liken it more as a conceptual design, more like a scope study type thing than really true schematic design. Yeah. Because it was more, they were test fitting what it could be rather than, this is, and so they did that. And I was actually pleasantly surprised at how not only, their grasp of the understanding of campus planning, but also the understanding of how these particular buildings fit within the master plan and long range, planning and all of these other things. Basically the same stuff that we do on a daily basis. And, I think hopefully, I'm tooting our own horns that it had to do, with how well we engaged them and our process of talking them through how to do all of this stuff. I mean, we were pretty hands-on with them throughout the development process of just, being there to kind of like explain to them exactly what planning is and what you do with it and all that other stuff. Anyway, so that was, and so it was really interesting because as we were going through this, then we got to a point where, okay, how do we best engage professionals in helping mentor the students in kind of like this distance learning, this Zoom calling, of how are we able to reach out to them and talk them through what it means to do some conceptual design work for a particular building that they chose. What type of, what are the key things that they should be looking at? What are the ideas and notions and how to follow through with them? And then even to the point of like, how is the best way of presenting that to, your client? Okay, so now you've got an idea. Now you want to pitch it to them and tell them why this is the best idea. So rather than, me taking, a couple of students and stuff, the professor had, obviously has a wealth of people that he knows and kind of reached out and kind of paired a one-on-one. And so paired him up with people who know how to do these type of buildings. So like, people who are really versed in doing student housing. He paired up with people who are doing student housing and people who are, apt to do, dining halls or, lab buildings or this, that, or the other. And, paired them up with that, and which, really kind of helped them out because again, they're tapping into the firsthand knowledge of the precedents that they would be doing anyway. I mean, they would be looking for their precedents images and understanding how to do that. What's better than just to sit down with somebody who actually does it on a daily basis and then says, okay, this is what we look for when we're doing these buildings. It was very hard to not direct their design. He was like, oh, don't do that. I think you should do this. And, there was probably on occasion where I did suggest, well, maybe you should look at doing this because volumetrically, I think it works better that way or this way. But other than that, it was, it was trying to be truly their own creation, their own presentation, just trying to understand what are the ramifications of the decisions that they're making. I mean, okay, you're doing that. Why? You're doing this. Why? It's actually kind of fun. It was, I've always wanted to teach, but I've taught in practice with the people who I'm practicing with rather than like in an academic situation, which I know you can tell me firsthand is a completely different animal altogether. Because I was, and you could really tell when this, when the one kid was giving his presentation that I was working with, that he really did listen to, kind of the suggestions and things that I said, but it was funny because some of my very natural buzzwords that I use when I'm describing things, he was saying. But the good thing about it is that he actually understood why he was saying them rather than just using them as words. He was actually understanding them and understanding why he was saying them and not just like regurgitating things. And so it was just like, oh, wait, I got through to him?
Got the gratification.
Yeah, I was like, dang it, I like this.
It's the whole presentation thing is interesting, right? Because in school you're kind of presenting to other architects, and I think that's probably one of the things that is so different. Actually, being a designer or on the presentation team when you are speaking to clients is you can't speak the architect language. You have to
Right.
You have to speak the language that they speak, and then it kind of breaks down into what sector you're in, how familiar are they with doing building projects, stuff like that. And it does change, and you kind of have to be a chameleon in that kind of a sense to speak different languages for different groups.
We have, on occasion, we have a presentation coach or whatever come in and work with people, especially like if we're going after a really big project and stuff. We will have the team assembled. We will go through the presentation, basically give pointers on how each person could either better or change or whatever their method of presenting so that we could better land the job. And one of the things that always kind of stood out to me when I worked with him was, he kept referencing Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE. And Jack Welch is, multiple degrees and everything else, and didn't really need to have to tailor or cater to anybody, really. I mean, it's the CEO of GE, doesn't really. But he always believed that the best way to present to people is in a very plain spoken manner. Don't speak down to people. Just tell them, straight out, this is what it is in very simple language. Don't try to flower up the language. Don't try to arca-speak them.
Yeah, it's totally that exact thing. It's like they'll stop you. What are you trying to say? And
Exactly.
You say what you're trying to say, and they say, just say that.
It's the juxtaposition. The juxtaposition of the interstitial space and the blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, what does all of that mean? And yeah, like when we're talking to somebody about, all of these different things, people get it and they're like, okay, yeah, I understand. But when we're talking to, non-architects, they could be looking at us with two heads and, being able to present to them in a very clear, concise, and just straightforward manner, which I've never really had much trouble with because I probably don't know half of the arca-speak words out there that I should know.
I don't know about that.
And it's probably just the fact that, I will definitely say that the military did help me in a lot of cases because I was dealing with so many different people. And as I started to, go from, private to a specialist and then into becoming a sergeant and then, becoming an instructor and all these other things, I need to interface with people that came from all different walks of lives. And being as plain spoken as possible and being as clear as possible and not sugarcoating the intent, but just simply laying the intent out, but in a simple, clear, concise manner was probably the one thing that I learned from the military and trying to elevate their education without, making them feel like, oh, I'm an idiot because I don't know what, juxtaposition means or whatever. It means over there.
Over there.
And so I always learned that was probably the easiest way to do that is not flower stuff up. And I think that was kind of like the whole intent of us, like, doing this so early on, with the evolution of the name of the podcast was just like, people think that we're so inaccessible. And then going back to what we were talking about on the last show, people feel like we're inaccessible because we try to flower up things and puff ourselves up sometimes when we really don't need to. And if we became more accessible and we did, design for that 99% that, we were kind of talking about that we sometimes never really have access to, maybe we'd get more access to them. Maybe they would realize, oh, you're not trying to be greater than us. You're just trying to help us.
I think the theme of this recording today is communication, right? I mean, communication is the most important part of what we do, I believe, right? If you can't communicate the ideas, they will never build the ideas. Then there's lots of steps along the way, and the one we're talking about now is kind of communicating with clients and speaking a common language with clients. But the reason why is to create a connection with clients, because if you can create connection and you can inspire, people get excited about doing the project, and then they have ownership in it because they are actually feeling like their ideas also have value in the process. And so when you have that kind of inclusion with a client through your communication, you're not creating separation, you're creating inclusion by connecting with them. You really do get the kind of, and it's not just about getting buy-in, but not really thinking of a better way to say it right now, right? It
ownership.
It's us. It's we. It's
Yes.
not you. It's not I. And that to me is the importance of that communication and why people have to work so much on doing it well. And that's why we bring coaches in, right? To help get us there even better, because there are definitely people in all of our offices who should never talk to a client.
Yes.
That could be a lack of skills, it could be personality, it could be a multitude of reasons. And that's okay. But what's important is identifying who those people are. And if you want to be one of those people, this is a skill that you can learn and you can get better at. It's not just something that is an innate talent that people have and people don't. It's definitely a skill that can be learned and it can be cultivated and you can get better at it. And that's why these coaches are so valuable, because they can come in and they can say, stop saying that word, right? Like nobody likes that word. I've heard that in these coaching sessions for sure. Most likely they've never been told that before and they don't think about it. And so when you think about juxtaposition and those kinds of things, it's like you are using Archispeak again, right? Stop using Archispeak. You're going to turn them off. What you're trying to do is create a connection, and what you're going to do is break that when you say that. Mm-hmm. And that's very important advice, I think. So whether you're a student, whether you're an emerging professional, like it doesn't matter. Like the ability to gain these skills through experience and through coaching are really valuable and worthwhile if you want to get things built, if you want to get your ideas across and learn how to communicate those with other people.
I will say that as you were talking about that, the one thing that I was thinking about back to the communication through documentation is they're going to build what you draw, not what you mean. And that can definitely translate to, that client connection as well, is that they're going to listen to you and what you say. And if you lose them, they have absolutely no connection with what you want to do. And so you've got to be very clear on the way that you talk to them and the way that you communicate, because then, you are able to get that, what you want to build across to them. Mm-hmm. And, cause I'm kind of like meandering here a little bit, because what I wanted to kind of really drive home the point of, like, the clarity in conversation, but the clarity in conversation is, kind of what you're talking about with the client relationships. It's the clarity of how you interact with the contractor. It's the clarity of how your documents, interact with all of those different people. And it's just this, it all, to me, always comes down to just clarity. How are you being as clear as you possibly can on what it is that you're trying to do, whether it's, the building of the relationships with people or trying to just get something built.
I think that's why we like diagrams so much, right? Like I was just thinking, diagrams are the simplest form of a drawing to convey an idea. And usually it's a big idea, I would say. Diagrams are rarely about detailed things, just thinking about overall partie diagrams. And there's something really lovely about how much can be conveyed with such a simple drawing, right? Or axon or shaded view, or, and it's not about experience necessarily. It's just about understanding, like, oh, I get it. You look at that one thing, or maybe it's a sequence of images, drawings that convey why a decision was made or what the function of a thing is. I think that's what's so interesting about how much information, and it's like encoded knowledge in the most simple form. It's really an interesting concept to me. And I think, our architects, for the most part, I think are pretty infatuated with diagrams. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, what's the diagram? What's the diagram? You can keep asking that throughout the process of design. And I think it is kind of important up front to kind of define that partie, that overarching. It's basically your set of rules that you can always come back to and use as a decision-making tool to remember where you were headed from the beginning. And if you've strayed too far, you can kind of go back and look at that partie diagram and say, you know what, we're not really following that anymore. So is it worth reevaluating, or do we just go back to, does it help us get back on track? Versus like the diagram at the end, which is the one you keep asking about throughout the process. What's the diagram? What's the diagram? What is the simplest way you can communicate this idea, kind of a cartoonish type of a form at the end of a project, and people get it? And I think that there is something kind of unique about that in architecture, to really simplify communication and connection down into this one thing that you can, post on a website or put in a book or a manual or whatever you want to say, and say, here's the big idea. It's this simple drawing. And how much can you convey, and how much can you cut out of the project that is complicating that? Right? How can you get back to, and that's probably the hardest part, is really going through and combing through. I always kind of felt that was so interesting when I got into first year in college, and we all did case studies on Craig Elwood projects. And if you don't know Craig Elwood, look him up. He's got really minimal modern architecture. He actually taught at the school that I went to, and so he was not hard to find information on him. There's some great books out there on his work. And I always thought that it looked so simple. And it was kind of conveyed to me very early on that is a very difficult position to get to. Simple is difficult. Mm-hmm. And he made it look so easy. He made it look so elegant. And it's amazing how much thought has to go into that. So what I'm trying to say is these diagrams don't draw themselves, and you have to make some very specific decisions to be able to get to the point where you can convey that idea so simply. In a lot of cases, I think, with the complexities that we're dealing with in projects, and the different user groups, and the site conditions, and the campus conditions, and all these things. So it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of practice, but I think ultimately that is a really great communication tool in the end.
Right. Yeah.
Something to really strive for.
Sent me down a rabbit hole of wanting to sit and just stare at Craig Elwood stuff all day long.
Yeah, I've got the Esther McCoy book here. It's old. It's so good, though.
I mean, it's just beautiful, simple moves. But, to get those beautiful, simple moves, you've got to have a true understanding of what it takes to do those. I mean, things you're just like, wow, that's, okay, that's easy. Well, is it? Is it?
It looks easy. I mean, and it is deceiving in that way, for sure.
Now, I mean, I would, because of course I'm looking at stuff right now, I would contend that there are a lot of, thermal breaks here. And,
It was the 60s.
Yeah. But yeah, beautiful. Ugh.
Yeah, Palm Springs modern, a lot of stuff in Malibu. It's like steel and glass, lots of steel and glass.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason people just don't build your typical suburban home out of steel and glass, but you could just do so much, so simple, so clean, so modern.
Yeah, but not very many people can put that together either. That's another
too.
thing, is you got to find somebody who really wants to be able to put that kind of craft into getting things exactly right and getting the tolerances a lot closer than they do with the standard types of construction.
Well, because most of the time, especially like looking at this one house that he's got these beautiful cantilevers, and the ground like drops away from this thing, and then he's just kind of like delicately stilted off of it with these like real thin columns that pass through the living space down into down to grade. And you look at it, very simple moves, nothing too dramatic about it, but because all of the steel is expressed, all of the joints are expressed, and we typically don't do that, where we're always hiding the steel.
Cover that up.
So
yeah,
it can be as ugly as it wants to be, because you're just not going to look at it. And then for some reason, we have to charge this premium, when we want to do architecturally exposed structural steel. We charge this big premium of how it's going to look, because, we're just asking them to be a little bit more craftier with their connections and stuff. And
Yeah.
And you'd probably say that I bet they would be more willing to do the finer stuff. But, I think there's this interesting mix between, kind of what the expectations are. So I don't have to make it look pretty because you're gonna hide it.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe people, guess where I'm going is maybe people, like the steel erectors would like actually want to, do better, connection details. Just knowing that they're, it's going to be seen. I mean, think about this. I mean, one of the trades that I wish we could put on display a lot more is the electrician. Because if you've ever like just looked at the conduit runs,
I have pictures of it. It's amazing.
and it's some absolutely beautiful work that unfortunately gets covered over.
Right.
But I mean, it's just this like cluster of conduit that then makes this beautiful little, turn. And I mean, we can't. I mean, we could draw that, sure, but because they actually, care about their craft and they're like, look, I've got very limited space. I got to use it as best as I can. And so they do all these beautiful little, twists and turns with the conduit. And you just like, and you see it and then you just like, God, I wish that we didn't have to cover this over, but go ahead and put that ceiling up.
I was going to look. I have a picture in the Seattle, I think it's called the Seattle Music Experience. Yeah, here it is. It's in the...
Oh, the old EMP, is it the Gary building?
Yeah, in the Gary building. Have you been there?
No, I have not.
All right, I'm going to throw in the chat, and I'll use it as the album art for this section of the show. But check out and this obviously was always meant to be on display. So I'm sure there's even an extra level of craftsmanship here, but this is kind of what you're talking about. It's very because this one has integrated lighting, and
yes.
But it's just gorgeous, and it was like, how can you not want to take a picture of this?
Right.
Museum of Pop Culture, for those interested, the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle.
So the buildings that I've done throughout the course of my career have stuff like this.
Oh yeah, totally. I have photos
over.
from my. Yeah, exactly.
And
you grab that picture before it gets covered over.
And you're just like, oh gosh, that's just, it's, some amazing, just, it's just like, look,
it's craft. Yeah,
exactly. And, they're bending the conduit and all of these, like a run of like, say 16.5-inch conduit that's just going to all sorts of different directions, but originating from the same location. And they all have to like do this little dance that comes up and moves around like these little tight spaces, and then
look on that left wall over there towards the upper corner, and you can see how it goes up and over a sprinkler head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just barely a little maneuver there to get it coordinated with the sprinkler head. So cool.
And so when we walk through and we look at like this stuff, and you're just like, this is amazing. This just this must have been, really designed to, to do this. And then, an electrician's just like, yeah, we do this all the time.
Right. It's normal.
Like,
but they do take pride in that work for sure. And it shows when you see those runs where, everything's coming together into one place, and all these conduits are tightly spaced and perfectly bent so that they go off in their different directions. And it's like, wow, you really, know what you're doing. It's really cool to see that kind of craft applied to something that is ultimately going to get covered up. Because, if you were just doing this yourself at home or whatever, you would never spend the time to do that. But in this case, like, it actually makes the other people's job who are coming in after you easier, right? Mm-hmm. Because they did spend the time to do it well, knowing that they're part of a larger sequence. And like, I guess this kind of goes back to what you were talking about in the last episode, where just understanding that this is a part of the larger whole and that it's important. All of it's important. And so you got to spend the time to do this well now so that others who are relying on you can come in later and just be able to work with what they inherit. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
At the University of Maryland, they've got a building. It's the Turner Building, and it was biggest benefactor was the guy who founded Turner Construction.
Okay.
at the University of, and so this particular college, they're the ones who basically do all of the different engineering for all the different kind of CA trades or, construction trades. So they do fire protection, civil engineering, electrical and mechanical engineering. But the thing about the building is that everything is on display in this building. So you see, people were asked, in fact, actually that particular Auburn studio, before everything went the way it has, they had come up here and, we were touring different campuses and we were giving them a tour of the University of Maryland, and we happened to go into that particular building. And what was great about the building is that everything that they teach is on display for normal use in the building. I mean, the ductwork, you see the ductwork and you see, how it works with their particular labs. It's exposed how all the electrical work is. And so they designed it to be on display and a little bit more artistic in the way that it was constructed and designed and everything else. But it really let people see what all of the different, what is the things that are usually hidden behind everything. I'm going to need to find some images and maybe, or at least just put in a link of all of that. But I mean, it's a nice building overall design wise. It's really interesting, but not only that, it's just I think what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, the trades that they're trying to train in there. That is probably one of the most well-designed buildings that is conducive for the actual work that's going on within the actual education that's going on within the building.
Yeah. Building as a teaching tool.
Exactly.
Kind of idea. Yeah.
You're just like, thank you, people. Appreciate completely what's going on there.
Sounds like a good place to wrap it up, man.
Yeah.
I'm kind of meandered all over the place.
Yeah, totally.
That's fine. Cool. Well, I will see you on the next one.
See is a subjective term.
Well, we all see each other all the time.
Yeah. And hopefully we're, starting to come out of all of this stuff in the not too distant future.
All right, that might be all for this episode, but maybe listen to the end just in case. If you enjoyed the show, please take 15 seconds and help us out by leaving a nice review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. Share it with your friends, and we'll talk to you next time.
Only outlined my body in Tiffany's blue. When I died, I drove right in and swam with the dolphins and Lisa Frank and you. My funeral was beautiful. Oh, we got it for days on end. Thank God I'm cut, 'cause of my kind of luck. I'll be up on the block in front of all of my friends. This is what you get. This is what you get. This is the schedule, this is the set. It's unpredictable lest you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know. This is what you get. This is the schedule, this is the set. It's unpredictable lest you forget. If you blow, you can bet. I know. Top to the basement. Blow by blow, kinds of steel. Very real, very rock, but it's still very rock body. Big for scissors, sister preach. Deep dope in the ridge, fast and can bet. I know. This is what you get.
I kind of hope for that, and I kind of don't. I kind of like one thing that I really like about all of this is that it forces people to rethink how they're doing things, or hopefully is. I'm hopeful that it is, because there were so many things that we just do because that's the way we've always done it, and I think that is ripe for a fresh set of eyes to bring it back.
Yeah.
And I think if it doesn't go on long enough, that just won't happen. Everybody wants to get back to, what we've always said, normal. And I don't want to get back to normal. I want to get back to better. So we have to actually have the time to make things better so that we can come out of this how we want to be and not how we were. And at the same time, like, I miss people, and I like going to national parks, and I like not standing in a line to get into Home Depot. There's so many things about this that are bad, but I also think that there will be hopefully really great new ways that we think coming out of this, because we don't need to think like we used to in so many respects. Not everything, but in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I kind of think like if we just go back now, it's just going to be, okay, here we are, we're back. This is how it was. And I don't want to go back to how it was for everything. I mean, there's a lot of fine things, but there's a lot of stuff that just needs to be changed. You got to clear out the cruft.
True. Yeah. When everything started to kind of go down, and we saw the pending quarantines and all of that other stuff, and as the office was trying to decide the next steps, and the good thing about the office is that they ask everybody, it's like, what are your thoughts about how we need to do this, and what do you guys need to do this? I was commuting in, and I was on the phone with just a fellow coworker. We were talking about some other things, and then the conversation came around to the pending quarantine, and I said, this will change the way that we do business for the future forever. Mm-hmm. And we're not quite, what's interesting is as the quarantine, as states start looking at the way that they can, start lifting quarantine, the stay-at-home order and the different quarantines, and how we go back to work, and whether it's a slow roll or just let's just start it off. Companies specifically like ours are having that dialogue of like, what are your next steps? What do you want to do? And almost everybody that I've had, conversation with within the office is like, I don't necessarily feel like, the way that we were doing business is the way we have to do business from now on.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And for me, I jokingly say, but, jokingly with a little bit of seriousness in it, like, I don't necessarily have to drive 45 minutes to an hour one way, so 2 hours of my day being spent driving to and from work, when a lot of the work that I do can be coordinated, like I have been doing, can be coordinated just from a central hub of a computer for at least a portion of that. And then there's a portion that I do have to be face-to-face with people to, go back to what we were talking about earlier. I got to continue that client contact and that client, reassurance that we are here to, help them through whatever process or stage of process that we're going through, and be there to be able to coordinate all of that. But, and then, the obvious, design, efforts and stuff like that, and the coordination between all of those. There are those things that, we all talk about needing to have, face-to-face interaction, but there are a lot of things that we do in architecture don't really need face-to-face interaction. And, maybe it's me not being in there every day. Maybe it's me being in the office half of the week. And the other half of the week is very deliberate work that needs to be, be happening with certain people. And so like all of that's very deliberately organized around what we need to do. And then the other half of it is like, I can just go down into my basement and coordinate those other things with other,
Yeah. No, I think, and this gets back to what we were talking about pre-show the other day. The other time was the mentorship, right? And the people missing out on the senior architect, in your because you're in your basement, right? You're not in the office, and talking about that deliberate crossing of the paths that just happens naturally because everybody is in the same location, and I'm concerned about that.
Right.
Going back to a scenario where most of the people aren't there most of the time. And so how do people learn through osmosis? Like we count on, nobody realizes that we count on it, but it happens and it works. There probably are some people who realize that, but it's, for the most part, it's just a byproduct of the way that we currently work, and people picking up the other conversations that are happening on the project that they're not directly a part of, and the decision-making process, and how to deal with consultants that are late, and how to deal with clients who keep making decisions at the last minute. And, there's so many things like that just are overheard in an office environment. And I wish even more of it was overheard. I wish there weren't executives closed off behind doors. And so people could really learn about the business of architecture and how the decisions are made, and what are the struggles. It's not all just the architecture happy hour kind of a thing. It's
right.
Like, what does it actually take to run this business? And how does that happen when everybody's not on a Zoom call with everybody else, right? When you don't just have the open mic of the office at your fingertips. And I mean, we talked about this in a prior episode when we were talking about the value of taking your headphones off, right? And just being a part of the larger environment.
Yep.
Rather than being in your own world. And it totally makes sense when you just need to crank on something to do whatever you need to do to get yourself in the right environment to accomplish what you need to accomplish. And so how do we create a balance between the virtual and the real to get work done and to help the next generation of architects be great architects?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I'm thinking about just the way that our particular office is set up. And, you've been there, you've seen that it's kind of like this big office, open pod type office where we actually have made the conscious decision. Now, it's every there's not a single door in any of the offices except for HR and our finance department, which, of course, need their, specific sets of privacy and close-offness just to, do their jobs, which is kind of slightly outside of the realm of what, we do on a day-to-day basis. So, I totally understand that. But for the most part, like all of the people who are involved with, any of the different types of design aspects of whether it's architecture, landscape architecture, graphic design, all these different ones, even marketing and business development, there's not a single door in the office. And we have people interspersed throughout where, like my pod may be, a senior architect and, a couple of different, like, associates and junior staff. And then, the next pod over, same thing, might have a principal in it. And, and so there are all of those different types of conversations that are going on. And yeah, sometimes people choose to maybe not listen into some boring, like, business development conversation going on and put their headphones on. But, the opportunity has been kind of like laid out there that we're able to do that. We're able to have those conversations. And then, really, if you just, turn around, it's like, say, hey, such and such, I'm working through this detail, what do you think, or where should I look, or what should I do? And, so that opportunity is always there to be able to kind of like have that cross conversation with variety of different levels of experience, which I think has always served us well in the way that, at least in, now my 5 years of being at this particular firm, is I've seen that, the that, and I've seen that benefit to the to the junior staff, where they develop at a quicker rate than I've seen in the past, because they have access to all of the different experience levels and all the different information that they could possibly want to ask. And obviously it's up to them to like ask that question and do those things. But overall, though, I think just having that access and being able to open up and there are other companies that I know do that as well. But then there are the other companies that have the closed doors. It's the office. The four walls, and it's kind of this. Well, I earned my office, so I want my office so I can close off and get my work done. And I may start off with like a list of things that I need to do, and I may not ever get through that whole list. But I'm pretty sure that as I go through my day, I'm getting plenty of work done. And if it's, having the conversation with, somebody less experienced than me to like walk through something, and that may not have been on my list, but I think that's a pretty good accomplishment to be able to end the day with, well, I didn't get this email answered. Okay, well, I'll do that tomorrow. But this got done.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
All right. You ready to start the show now?